It doesn't matter if you're a brand new Blender user or an industry veteran. At some point in your career or your hobby career, you've probably tried to collapse an editor window and instead you've split that window into two new ones. And then, trying to close those two new ones, you split them into two more new ones. And so on until you have an infinite vortex of editor windows and you don't know what anything is and you don't know what your original window is and you can't remember your project and you think maybe the windows are starting to talk to you and you could hear them insulting your family and, well, you get it. I love a lot of things about Blender, but its editor window management system is one of the things that I had more of a love-hate relationship with, at least until I started to get some better Blender skills. And that's because there's actually another way to close these. If you go up here to the View menu, and you pop open the Area submenu, you can see that there's actually all sorts of controls for cutting up and closing these areas. So if I click Close Area, you can see it will just immediately close this. Now, is it practical for me to go to the View menu of every single one of these? Absolutely not. But luckily, Blender has a God Mode search tool. So if I bring that up, you can go to Close Area in the search menu and click, and it will close whatever your cursor is over. And if I want to continue this, I can just bring it over another one, and it'll be in my recent searches, so I can just continue closing things. You can also add this to your Quick Favorites menu, which is accessed by pressing Q, and if you see here, I don't have it currently. And I can do that by bringing up the search menu, looking for the item that I want, or if it's in my recents, I can just click on it there, right-clicking it and saying Add to Quick Favorites. And now when I press Q, it will come up. The caveat to this is these are contextual, the Quick Favorites that is. So if I go over into this timeline instead of a 3D viewport and I bring it up, it's not there anymore. So you'd have to add it for every editor type that you want that available for, which is kind of a pain. So for that reason, I use search because if you see here, it's in my recent searches. And if I bring it over to this context, it's still in my recent searches. There's one other trick that you can use if you've made a humongous mess and you don't want to go through the pain of closing every single one of these things. It's a little bit annoying, but it does work. So you save your file, quit Blender, open Blender again, pull up the Open menu and go to your file, select it, but don't load it yet, pop this tab out on the side, and uncheck Load UI. And then when you click Open, it should load your file without the user interface. The final tip I have here is that it's often easier to use the vertical or horizontal split function rather than using the click and drag from corner method, especially when you have lots and lots of windows and the area you're trying to split is pretty small. And to do that, you can just bring up that search menu again. And I have mine macroed to spacebar, but obviously it's the macro of your choice. And I can just search for horizontal or vertical split. And if I bring up horizontal split and click it, what it's going to do is it's going to give me this line. And when I select, it's going to split that into two windows. Vertical split works basically the same way, except vertically. Again, this is supported on most editor types, just not the properties editor, the asset browser, the Python console, the text editor, and I think possibly the spreadsheet. If you're like me though, most of the time you're splitting windows, you're splitting the 3D view or material editor in order to switch between those and switch back and forth between timeline and other things. Hopefully this gets you out of any editor messes you've gotten yourself into. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you should definitely do that and ring the bell so you get notifications and don't miss my next videos. Till then, never stop learning.